Most people think you need tens of thousands of dollars or more to make Google Ads work, and that's just not true. When I first started my Google Ads agency, I ran successful Google Ad campaigns for clients with as little as $100 per month. That's just over $3 per day. And the good news is you absolutely can succeed with Google Ads with a small budget, and in this video, I'm going to show you how. So before I get into specific strategies and techniques that I'd recommend you use if you are running Google Ads on a small budget, I first need to define what a small budget actually is, okay? So I would classify a small Google Ads budget as anything less than $3,000 per month, so $100 per day or less. And I would classify a tiny Google Ads budget as anything less than $600 per month or $20 per day or less. Now, I totally appreciate that for a lot of people watching this video, they'll be like, what? A $3,000 a month budget is a small budget. That's crazy. I couldn't imagine spending anywhere near that much. And I completely understand that. I started with budgets much smaller than that. At the time, it would have seemed crazy to spend that, let alone more. But now, having been in this space for 15 plus years, having operated with campaigns that are spending $100 a month all the way up to campaigns that are spending millions a month, I feel like that is an appropriate classification. And beneath that amount, beneath that sort of $100 a day amount, there are specific things that you want to do differently from other Google advertisers that are operating with larger budgets. And that's why I wanted to set the sort of limit there, because everything I'm about to run through really does apply to those businesses operating with budgets $3,000 or less per month. Like I've said, you absolutely can succeed with a small Google Ads budget. You absolutely can succeed with a tiny Google Ads budget. And actually, I recommend that a lot of businesses start there with a small or tiny budget, because you can start small and test, work out what works for your business, generate a positive return on ad spend. So you're getting significantly more money back from your Google Ads than what you're investing into it. And then you can look to take that money and allow you to scale and grow from there. Many businesses, even ones that operate with massive Google Ad budgets today, they started with a relatively small budget initially. So absolutely fine to start there and then look to scale. So like I said, there are specific strategies and techniques that I'd recommend you use if you are operating with a small or tiny budget. And that's what we're going to be running through in this video. I've got a whole bunch of recommendations and things that you should use to get the best possible results operating with that budget level for you today. So let's start with number one, which is to stick to search campaigns. So when you go through the Google Ad campaign creation process, you will be asked relatively early on for a campaign type. And I've got the campaign type options up in front of me here. And you see the first option here is search, and that's where I think most small budget Google advertisers should live. Search is the easiest part of Google Ads to understand. It's what a lot of people think of when they think of Google Ads. Someone searches for something and then ads that are relevant to what they've searched for pop up. There's intent there. They're looking for something. They're looking for a solution, a product, a service maybe. Ads put in front of them, they click on that, come through to your website, purchase, or become a lead, whatever it is that you want to do depending on how your business is constructed. So it's the easiest to understand. It's also easier from a advertiser skill standpoint. A lot of the other campaign types require ad creative. So they require videos or imagery to make work. That can be hard for a lot of smaller businesses to produce, and most businesses operating with small budgets are smaller businesses. They cost money. You need a video editor, a videographer. Maybe you're going to work with influencers to help you produce that stuff. And that might not be feasible at this stage. Definitely something you could look to expand to. I'm a big fan of Performance Max campaigns. I think a lot of Google advertisers can start with search, particularly if they're operating with a small budget, and then look to expand to other campaign types. Performance Max is a great way to do it, but I recommend you do that once you've achieved a certain level of scale. Performance Max is a much more automated campaign type than, say, search, and therefore it relies more heavily on the conversion data you have within your ad account. Most ad accounts operating with small budgets don't have tons of conversion data. They haven't generated loads of purchases. They haven't generated loads of leads, and therefore things like Performance Max might not work as well yet. Definitely one to watch out for in the future. I have seen some small budget Google advertisers, particularly e-commerce businesses, work quite well with shopping campaigns. That might be something that you want to test. But still, if you want to keep it simple, let's just set the foundations. Let's get some conversions. Let's establish profitable Google ad campaigns that we can then use to reinvest and scale. Search is likely to be the way to go. Technique number two is to use AI Max, but be careful. So AI Max is a relatively new feature and applies to search campaigns. And with AI Max, you're basically saying to Google, I'm happy for you to go ahead and find new keywords for me to target based on the information on the website, based on the stuff that I input myself as the advertiser within the campaign, but also to do it with the ad copy side of things. So generate headlines, generate descriptions, things like that. So AI Max is fantastic. Well, there's a number of reasons why I'd recommend you use it. First, it's going to save you time on campaign setup and then also on optimizing and adding things and stuff like that, because Google's AI is going to do a lot of that work for you automatically. It also helps give you, I think, some initial guardrails. If you're a beginner Google advertiser, if you're operating with a small budget, don't perhaps have loads of experience, where Google's going to create headlines for you and descriptions for you that are likely to work. Google has access to who knows how many ad variations across their platform over the years. They have a lot of data on what works, what sort of language gets people to click, and that's going to be added in. The same logic applies to keywords. So it's sort of less likely that you'll make mistakes and kind of miss the mark and not have the right tone of your ads or not target the right keywords altogether. Benefiting from Google's generative AI capabilities is good now. It's only likely to get better in the future as Google's AI gets smarter and is better able to predict, you know what? Writing the headline this way as opposed to this way, tweaking the wording, gets a 14% increase in the click-through rate, which is great for this advertiser. They're going to get better results, right? So definitely something you want to take advantage of. And Google has said so far with AI Max, you can see as you go through the process, that using AI Max gives advertisers that use it a 14% uplift on their results on average, which is certainly something that you want to take advantage of, especially given as it's basically automated and doesn't require much effort at all. So just to quickly show you how AI Max works and clarify a few points about what you might want to use and what you might not to. If we go back to the Google Ad account I was showing you previously, we click on that search campaigns like we talked about. I'm just going to skip through this section here. We're going to go ahead and click Start New. This is an example ad account. There's all sorts of demonstration things that pop up. I'm going to scoot through all of this because what I want to do is get to the AI Max section here, right? And you can see here that Google is providing all sorts of information, sort of selling AI Max and the benefits of AI Max, right? So get the best AI power performance on Google search, typically say 14% more conversions or conversion value, what I just talked about, and they've got some additional information here. So you can go ahead and click here to turn this on, optimize your campaign with AI Max. Then there's sort of two big sections within AI Max, right? So you've got text customization, so use text from your website, landing pages, ads, and provided assets to create customized ad copy. That is an option that you probably want to leave on. That's one of the benefits I just talked about. Then you've got this option here, which is final URL expansion. So send traffic to the most relevant URLs on your website when it's likely to result in better performance. So instead of just everyone going through to the same page or the page that's applicable to that product, the URL that you've selected, you can allow through AI Max Google to go, actually, we're going to send people to this page instead of this one. Whether or not you use this very much depends on your website. Let's say you're advertising a product range, for example, and people might click through to different URLs. This makes a lot of sense. If you're a service-based business and you really want to make sure that people go through to certain pages where they're more likely to become a lead, or I really want to make sure they go through to this page where we've got all our case studies and testimonials, they're more likely to convert once we speak to them. Like, there might be other reasons why you don't want to use final URL expansion. Or if you do use it, you want to add URL exclusions, like absolutely make sure no one goes through to a thank you page, or absolutely make sure no one comes through to this page because they just don't convert. If we're advertising for our business as a marketing agency, we want to be very specific with the pages people come through to. So we're going to deselect final URL expansion. That's very much going to apply to your business. So I'm going to go ahead and click next here, and then you simply want to add in the final URL. So the URL of the products or services that you want to advertise in your campaign. So I'm going to go ahead and add a link in here to our Google Ads mentorship program, which I'll mention a little bit more about later on. And then once I've added in that URL, Google will take a second and they'll automatically create most of the time this section here, what makes your product or service unique. So they're talking about, being a mentorship program designed to help such and such, led by Ben Heath, etc., right? So they've added in some information in there. And then beneath this, Google will recommend ad groups. So you can go in and edit these if they're not quite right, like the wording on them is not quite right. You can add some ad groups in yourself, but Google's just going to help you out by suggesting some ad groups to get you along the process. Then you want to go ahead and click generate both keywords and assets. And then Google's going to take a little bit of time to do this, and they're going to take the information that they found on the website, combined with maybe any tweaks that you've made, and they're going to generate assets. So that's going to be descriptions, headlines in your ads. It's going to be some of what used to be called ad extensions as well, so site links and call outs and stuff like that. And then of course they're also going to add in a bunch of keywords. So a really good way to start. You can still go in and add a bunch of things in yourself once Google's been through this process and tweak and add in keywords that you want to specifically target, or I want to make sure we mention this in our responsive search ads headline wise, but a good way to save some time. Now, one of the things that I do need to quickly mention about AI Max, and this applies to all AI tools when it comes to Google advertising, is that it's not a case of either use it or don't. It's a case of use it and then be the filter. Some of the stuff it produces is going to be fantastic. Some of the stuff it produces is going to go, that's not quite right for our brand. That doesn't really actually fit with what we're looking to do. And it's absolutely fine to go in and edit and adjust and do things that way, right? So don't feel, like I said, like it's either a use it or not. It's very much a, I will use it, but I'm the filter. I'm going to craft it and get the most out of it for my business specifically. My next recommendation is that I want you to focus on one very specific customer avatar. Don't try and sell to your audience more broadly, to sell to everyone that could potentially be a customer of yours. When you try and speak to everyone, you kind of end up speaking to no one. And when you have a small budget, you need to get really specific. You can't waste anything. You need your ads to pack as much punch as they possibly can. And one of the best ways to do that is by being really clear in your messaging, exactly who you serve, exactly who should click on your ad, who shouldn't. We'll talk more about avoiding bad clicks or non-ideal clicks later on, because you simply don't have the budget to waste. So I want you to focus on one very specific customer avatar, speak to them specifically, make it very clear, and of your whole target market, the one customer avatar that it makes sense to go after more than any of the others, like I said, within your target audience, are the most valuable ones. So speak to one very high valuable customer avatar. So let me give you a couple of examples. I'll show you a bad example and then a good example of doing this. So I'm back in my example Google ad account. We're in a responsive search ad here and at the description level. So let's say, for example, for this business we do bespoke kitchen work, like put in new kitchens, things like that, right? So we could go with a description like this: expert kitchen renovations near you. That is fine, but it tries to speak to the whole market, tries to speak to anyone that might be interested in kitchen renovations. If someone's looking for something a bit more specific, that's not really going to speak to them. It's just kind of going to be lost in the noise of the other ads and the other potential things that they could look at. Nowhere near as specific as I'd like you to be with a small budget. However, if we go with something like this instead, let me just grab the other example. Transform your Kensington home with the bespoke Italian kitchens. You can see how much more specific that is. So we've got transform your Kensington home. So people don't know, Kensington is a part of London that's very expensive. The properties there are very expensive. People who live there typically have a lot of money. So if you're a kitchen renovation or bespoke kitchen manufacturer in that area, specifying this location is likely to lead to high value customers. That's why I talked about the high value customer element. And then we've also got with bespoke Italian kitchens. So this isn't just any old kitchen that anyone might be interested in. They're bespoke. Italian, obviously you would want that to be true, but it also implies like quality. People expect it to cost more. So someone who clicks on an ad with that description is far more likely to be someone that has more money, that is interested in an Italian style kitchen, interested in something bespoke, not just, mass manufactured. And they're going to be clicking on that ad with the expectation that it's going to cost a lot more than alternative options. So that would be a much better example where, yes, you might pay more per click with ad copy like that, but the people that do click through are likely to be much more valuable to your business, more likely to convert, and more likely to spend more when they do. And like I said, when you've got a small budget, we need it to go as far as possible. We need every click to count, and using this sort of language, really focusing in on that one customer avatar is a great way to do it. Of course, once that works, once that's profitable, you then have money to reinvest and expand, and you could have other ads and target other keywords that have more broader appeal, or you can even be as specific as that example was, but just do it in other instances. So target other localities or target other types of kitchens as opposed to just Italian kitchens in this example. And just like I want you to focus on one customer avatar, one high value customer avatar specifically, I also want you to focus on one offer only. What we need to do when you're operating with a small budget is consolidate as much as possible, because Google needs data to optimize your campaigns to work out how to get you the best performance possible. And particularly as Google's AI is helping us out more and more with that, the more important that optimization process becomes. Now, how do we get data? Well, we need to consolidate. If we're advertising 10 different offers, it's going to take ages for you to generate enough conversions for each of those offers for Google to work out how best to advertise that offer and how to get you the best results. Whereas if that's focused all in on one offer, on one customer avatar, that takes far less time, and you're going to see better results that you can then use to get a good return on ad spend, be profitable, and scale, right? So which offer should you go with? Well, most businesses have one offer that sells much better than the others. Also makes sense to start there. More likely to succeed, allow you to reinvest. So if you've run Google Ads before, take a look at your data. Which has sold the best in the past? Go with that offer. Now, if you don't have that data around your best sellers, your relatively new business, I'd recommend that you advertise your higher value products and services first, because it is much easier to be profitable when you're selling something that's more expensive. When you sell something that's, say, 10 times as much as something else, it rarely costs you 10 times as much to generate that customer in the first place. So let's say we're selling a service that costs $200 to the customer and we need to generate leads for $20 each. We're only going to convert a few in order for that to be profitable, right? But if you instead sell a service for $2,000, it's unlikely that your cost per lead is going to go from $20 in that first instance up to $200, making it more profitable. So that's a typical recommendation. Obviously, there are limits. Things get too expensive. It can really drop demand, but that's just a good rule of thumb to be able to go with. And remember, the whole point of this stage is we put our best foot forward, we try and make it as consolidated and successful as possible, and we do that so that we can then reinvest, scale, and sell our other stuff later on. And actually, there are lots of businesses that a lot of their advertising efforts focus really on the one or two offers, even big businesses, because they know they'll sell the rest of their product range or their other suite of services to people once they've become a customer and bought that initial thing. That's also a perfectly fine strategy to use over the long run, not just when you're operating with a small budget. Now, we talked in those last 2 points about allowing Google to learn as fast as possible, and this next one very much is a continuation of that. So one customer avatar, we've got one offer that we're advertising, and really I want to stick to one campaign and as few ad groups as possible. We really want to consolidate down, because you could still have one customer avatar, one offer, but I've seen ad accounts do that and they've got 6 different campaigns running. That's going to take Google much longer to optimize to generate the data it needs to learn. Let's consolidate that down, one campaign if possible, and as few ad sets as we can, and allow Google to get out of that learning phase and to optimize your campaigns and get you better results from doing so. Technique number 6 is to pre-qualify with your ad copy. And here's why you might want to do that. With Google search, you don't pay unless people actually interact with your ads. And that means you can put people off that aren't suitable from clicking in the first place, make sure you don't spend money advertising to those people, and make your budget go that much further, like we've talked about before. We need every click to count, right? So larger companies often don't do this and don't want to do this because they're more willing to just get access to more of the available traffic, get people to their site. Maybe they don't convert as well, but that's fine because they'll get them eventually. They've got really big budgets. They can afford to do these things. They can play a little bit of a longer term game. We need our budgets to go further when operating with a small budget. So let me give you another example of what this might look like, because this is similar to the previous point, but a little bit different. Instead of sort of trying to attract our ideal customers, we're trying to put off everyone that's not. You can use both in combination, which is often a tactic that we use, particularly with small budgets, right? So if I jump back to our example Google ad account, I'm in a responsive search ad again, I'm at the headline section. For this example, let's say we're advertising gardening services. We could have a headline in there like this, starting at $500 per month. Now, what's that going to do if that's in our ads as a headline? That's going to prevent anyone who's looking to pay significantly less than that from clicking in the first place. They'll go, oh, okay, I've only got a small garden, I've only got a small yard, I just need someone to come in and do a little bit once a month, $100, $150 will do me, this is not for me. Which is great, because if you put those people off, you don't end up paying for them, you make your budget go that much further. Now, one thing you can do, if you just add in a whole bunch of headlines in a responsive search ad, Google's going to mix them up and chop and change and try and work out which ones will perform best for you. Can be on a click basis as well as conversions, depending on how you've got your account set up. So what I'd recommend, if you're going to put something in like this, which is putting people off who aren't your ideal customer with ad copy, is you can pin this headline. So I've got this headline in here and I can select the pin option and I can say, pin this headline, show in any unpinned position, show only in position 1, only in position 2. So if I would say look, I want this pinned, I want to make sure that people see this, that's how you go about doing it. Now I've done it with a budget criteria there, but you can do this. You can do this technique in a lot of different ways. You could say with an age range, right? So you could have a headline of for people age 65 and over, or a variation of it. You could do it based on location, specify of for such and such residents. And then anyone who's not that, who's younger than that age criteria or not in that location, they're not going to click through, or they're far less likely to, unless, they're only going to do it if they haven't read it properly. But it's going to help you avoid those wasted clicks and help make your Google Ads budget go that much further. This will decrease your click-through rate. This will make some of the other metrics in your Google Ad campaign, and we'll talk about metrics later on, look worse, but always remember what it is we're optimizing for here, and that's our best possible return on ad spend, our most profitable campaign, because that's what gets us out of a small budget and allows us to play with the big boys. Okay, we've got a lot more things to run through in this video, including some advanced techniques that I haven't talked about before. But first, I want to quickly let you know about my Google Ads mentorship program, which gives you all the support you need to get the best possible Google Ad results, including exclusive educational material, multiple daily live calls with me and my team so you can ask us any questions that you've got, unlimited one-to-one support, and a community full of people just like you trying to get the best Google Ad results possible. If that sounds interesting, there is a link in the video description below. Click on that, go through and book a free call with one of my team members to find out more, and hopefully me and you can be working together directly very soon. Number 7 is to embrace campaign monotony. And what do I mean by that? So boring consistency beats constant tinkering, constant adjustments, constant fiddling. And a lot of small budget Google advertisers, they're relatively new to the platform, they get excited, they learn a lot, they find out about new techniques and new ways of doing things, so they're constantly in there, restarting campaigns, switching out stuff, testing, I could do this offer and that offer, and maybe I should target these keywords, and maybe I should change up my customer avatar and go after these people. And if you're refreshing things and changing things within your ad campaigns, particularly with a small budget when you're not generating tons of conversion volume, it really hurts because it destroys valuable learning, and you're sort of resetting each time, and Google's like, right, okay, you've given me new parameters to learn under, fine, let's restart the learning process and let's go through that. So with small budgets in particular, best results come from steady optimization, keeping things consistent. Doesn't mean you don't make changes, but you're focusing on one end objective, like really decide who your customer avatar is going to be and stick with that. Really decide what your offer is going to be and stick with that. You can do a lot more testing later on when you have more budget to play with, but for now, resist the temptation, and I know it's there, to, I just quickly change this, and I'll just quickly add this in. Get your campaign set up properly, we'll talk more about that later on, in the first place, and then run with it, and then optimize without changing everything up. Next, don't compete where you can't win. So there are lots of industries where if you try and go after the head terms, like the main keywords with all the search intent, you are just going to get beaten up by the big players with much larger budgets. It's going to be really, really difficult for you to compete, right? But often you can find angles that they ignore or they don't focus on as much, sort of intent adjacency, where you can play in that space where it's far less expensive, you're going to pay a lot less cost per click, but maybe also you can win through specificity and say like, actually we're competing on this level because we actually serve these people specifically, and the big companies are sort of for everyone, and our offer feels more appealing for this customer avatar because we've emphasized the fact that we help people just like them. They feel like they're going to get a better deal. So let me give an example of this, right? So if I go back into my example ad account here, we're at the keyword entering stage. A big, massive competitive term like insurance is going to be really difficult to compete on. You would be advertised against some of the advertisers on Google that have the biggest budgets, that are willing to pay more than your entire daily budget for just one click. Like, that's going to be almost impossible to do. But let's say you are an insurance broker and you want to advertise on Google because there's search intent there and you think this is a great place to operate. You can do it, but you've got to be a little bit clever about it. So instead of just advertising on the keyword insurance, you could go for something like best insurance for accountants. Because if an accountant is searching using a search term like that or something similar, and you specifically do serve accountants, and then you can match the messaging in your ad and your landing page to make it clear that, yeah, we specifically serve accountants, we work loads of accountants, we've done them great deals in the past, we can really help them out, then an accountant is far more likely to click through and work with you. And that's not going to be something that the larger companies are likely to be specifically targeting because they're just going after the big, massive terms, and they're quite happy to pay a monster amount because they can afford to do so. Another example might be really expensive keyword to target might be CRM software more broadly. Again, you're going to compete against monster budgets, venture-backed companies that can afford to pay fortunes and lose money acquiring customers. You most likely can't with a small budget, but instead you could go with something like best CRM software for hair salons, if you specifically have a CRM software that is great for hair salons. So hopefully a couple of examples there that help emphasize that point. Number 9, optimize for conversions from day one. Now, a lot of Google advertisers, when they first start advertising, when they're operating with a small budget, they think, okay, well, in order to optimize for conversions, I'm going to need to set up all the conversion tracking. That seems difficult. That's going to take time. Why don't I just get started optimizing for, say, clicks? That'll get me up and running quicker. That is not something I'd recommend you do. I'd recommend that you get conversion tracking set up before you spend a penny, because the difference in how Google will optimize your campaign and the results that you get is absolutely massive. If you tell Google you want as many clicks as possible, that's what Google will get you. Those people won't necessarily go on and convert. Whereas if you say to Google, I want leads, I want sales, and you have the proper conversion tracking set up to do that, then Google is going to optimize your campaigns for those actions. That might sound like a minor point, it absolutely isn't, particularly as ad platforms like Google have gotten smarter and they use more AI and machine learning in their process to work out exactly who to put your ads in front of and when and how many times and based on what search term and all those sort of stuff. So you really want to put that on your side. If you don't have the technical expertise to get Google Ads conversion tracking set up, it's not that difficult to do, but if you don't, absolutely fine to hire someone to do this for you. It's not going to be very expensive. You can find people on Fiverr, Upwork, etc. that won't charge very much, that do this all day, every day, they'll get it sorted for you, and then you can go ahead and run your Google Ad campaigns in a way that puts Google's massive, powerful machine learning systems on your side, as opposed to something that might optimize in the wrong way. Number 10 is to cull aggressively and early. So what do I mean by that? When you're analyzing your data, so you've got your campaigns up and running or your campaign up and running, and you can see the results that are coming through, often I would advocate that you give things a good amount of time before deciding to make decisions like pausing keywords or deleting out headlines to put new ones in and things like that. You'd want to give things a good amount of time, wait until the data is statistically significant. Well, that advice changes when you're operating with a small budget, particularly with a tiny budget, because you just don't have the budget to waste and you don't have the time to, we'll wait a little bit longer to make absolutely sure that this headline isn't working very well for us or this keyword isn't working very well for us. So in this instance, if you see in the data, you maybe don't have many clicks, you don't have many conversions to be able to draw upon, but you can see in the data something isn't performing as well as something else, I think it's good to sort of gamble slightly and assume that that's likely to be the case going forward and get the stuff that's not performing very well out of there. Pause, remove those underperforming elements because, like I said, you just don't have the budget to waste. As you spend more, the upside to leaving things going a little bit longer, I think, is there just in case it is wrong, because that could be a potential breakthrough. But in the early days, it's all about being as profitable as possible. So anything that's not doing that for you, get rid of it and really focus down on the most profitable elements. My next recommendation is to target the bottom of the funnel exclusively. So when it comes to Google Ads for quite a long time now, digital marketing in general, you've got sort of 3 funnel stages typically. You've got top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. Advertisers have talked about this for a long time, and the top of funnel people are not close to buying. They're maybe not even aware they've got a problem, or if they are, they're not aware that there's a solution to the problem. They haven't looked into it, they're not there. Middle of funnel, obviously in the middle, and then bottom of funnel people are often people that are absolutely aware they've got a problem. They know there's a solution. Maybe they've done some research into the various options and they're very close to buying, people who are at the bottom of the funnel. Now, in those stages, they're not split evenly. So with any market, there are far, far more people typically in the top of funnel category and there are in the bottom of funnel. People typically don't stay very long in the bottom of funnel because they either purchase something and then sort of exit out of that system, or they decide they're not going to do anything about it and then leave, right? So they're only there for a relatively short period of time. There's not many people in there. Now, businesses that really want to scale and that are operating with large budgets, they need to target all the funnel stages, because there's many more people in the top of funnel, also more people in the middle of funnel than there are at the bottom. And if they were just advertising the bottom funnel, they would very quickly run out of those people and they just wouldn't be able to spend the large budgets, wouldn't be able to scale. You don't need to worry about that as a small budget Google advertiser. It's one of the best things you can do. So basically, just target that bottom of funnel people. Just target the people that are right there ready to go. You don't want to be creating ads for people that are searching for things where they're just obviously doing like very basic top level research. You want to be creating ads and targeting people that are searching for things where it's like, oh, they're about to buy. You can tell based on what they're searching for, and our language in our ads is very much encouraging people to do that. So let me give you another example of this. So here we've got an example of a plumber. And if we go back into our example Google Ad account, we go down to the description section, we could add in a description that looks like this, right? Book a certified plumber near you today. It's very clear that that is targeting someone at the bottom of the funnel. So they know they need to book a plumber, they've got an issue, probably looked into it, yeah, okay, I'm going to need a plumber for this. They obviously want it to be certified because, if you're working on your home, like that's what you want. Near you, clearly, today. Like all the language is geared up to be like, right, come on, you're right there, you know you've got an issue, you've thought about it, get it done right now. That's exactly what that copy is designed to do. And you can also do that with your keywords as well. So if we go back into our example ad account and we go up to the keywords section, and instead of just targeting plumber, you'd be better off with the keywords targeting plumber near me. Someone searching for plumber near me is further down the funnel than someone just searching for plumber in most instances. Or even better, you could have something like emergency plumber near me. Now that's someone who's very, very much in the bottom of the funnel. They need to hire someone now. So not just in the keywords, but also in the ads, have a real think about that. What are people wanting to see, or what's going to encourage them to take action when they are just about to buy for your product or service, versus much higher top of funnel stages where, yes, you can in future advertise those top of funnel people, explain the problem, maybe the solution, take them through a customer journey and get them to purchase. No need to do that with small budget. Just take advantage of that low hanging fruit, which is bottom of funnel people. Number 12 is to find undervalued clicks. Now, sometimes clicks are cheap, not because they're bad, not because they won't convert or they don't have value to advertisers, but simply because no one, or probably more accurately, not many people in your industry, your competitors, are optimizing for them. So the way you go ahead and find these is once you've been running a campaign for a bit of time and you have some data, I'll jump back into example Google Ad account. You want to come into Insights and Reports and then go ahead and click on this search terms. And what you're looking for in your search terms report are unusual queries, things that you wouldn't necessarily have thought ahead of time that would convert very well, but are converting well. So things that you're like, that's interesting. I wouldn't have expected that to work, but it's generating conversions. It's a profitable keyword, right? Now, if you didn't think that was likely to perform well, it's likely that your competitors also didn't think that was likely to perform well, and therefore no one's really optimizing for them. Now, your competitors' ads might be being put in front of those people just like yours were. That's how it appeared in your search terms report in the first place. Search terms report, by the way, shows the searches that cause your ads to be shown, and you can see clicks and conversion rates and things like that. I've got videos on search terms report if you want more detail on that. So your ads and competitors' ads might still be being shown to those people because Google's worked out if they're searching for this, they're actually good people to advertise to. But you can go one stage further and optimize for them. What does that mean? You can create ads with specific language that speaks to the people searching for those queries, and your competitors probably aren't doing that. And then you can also build landing pages that confirm that and also speak specifically to those people that are searching for those queries, and that can work really well. You can sort of look at this as gaining a competitive advantage of like, other people are advertising to them, but I'm really demonstrating that I'm the person they should work with. I'm the person they should buy from. They should click. They should come through. They come to the landing page and they're like, this is perfect for me specifically. So not something that every advertiser can do, and it takes extra effort to create those ads and landing pages. So you want to make sure that you're only doing this, don't do it when it's generated one conversion, for example. Make sure there's like real data to back up the fact that this is working well. But you can find some gems here that allow you to acquire customers relatively inexpensively that your competitors are sort of missing out on. Next, don't chase vanity metrics. So things like CTR, your click-through rate, impressions, the number of clicks you generated, they don't mean anything if you aren't getting conversions, if you don't have a good return on ad spend, if you aren't getting leads, sales, or whatever it is that you're looking for. Always measure your success, not just for the campaign in general, but also for the individual elements, by that which matters to your business most, which is almost certainly your cost per conversion or your return on ad spend. And it's so easy to get lost in all the other various elements that really, really important to bring it back to that. I've spoken to so many Google advertisers and seen so many ad accounts where people will be like, we just seem to get a great click-through rate when we're advertising this offer over this offer. So we're really stuck on that. You're like, right, but the return on ad spend is significantly worse. Your cost per conversion is worse, and these customers aren't worth more to you than those other ones. So they've just gotten sidetracked by those secondary metrics, vanity metrics, what I like to call secondary metrics. They're really useful as things to dig into, but only after you've done your optimization, your decision making around the primary metric, which is either cost per conversion if you can't accurately track your return on ad spend, or ROAS, ideally if you can. Then you might want to go, okay, this doesn't seem to be working. Why is it not working? Well, our click-through rate's really low. Maybe we need to be a bit more punchy with our offer or language in our ads, or maybe the conversion rate on the landing page seems to be really low, so maybe we need to do some work there. So good for diagnosing and digging into it, but don't, for example, prioritize one offer that has a better CTR over another offer that has a worse CTR if the one with the worst CTR actually converts better, which I have seen many advertisers do. We've still got a bunch more techniques to run through that help you get the most out of a small Google Ads budget, but first I wanted you to know about Hyros. Hyros is fantastic tracking and attribution software and can really help you improve your Google Ad results. It's a software that all the big players in the industry use, including myself. I use it to track results for my own ads across multiple platforms, including Google Ads, and all my organic results as well, which is super helpful. So if someone, for example, comes through and books a call for our done-for-you services, I can see exactly where that person came from. This is particularly important if you're running ads across multiple channels or generating customers organically as well. Without accurate data, you are flying blind, and knowledge is power. So let me show you how important this is. So I'm here in my HighRoast dashboard. I'm going to take a look at the data and the results that HighRoast has been able to track and compare those to what I'm seeing within my Google Ad account for the same campaign. So this is a Google Ad campaign that we've been running. We're only looking at data for a few days here, but it really demonstrates what's going on. So you can see HighRoast has registered 6 leads generated, a cost per lead of just over £15, 75 clicks. It's just a branded search campaign, hence why the CTR is 30%. So not a huge amount going on, but representative, right? So that's the data we can see within HighRoast. If I jump over to my Google Ad account, we look at the exact same campaign, same time frame. We've got May 21st to 27th. You can see a lot of the data matches up, right? We've got 75 clicks, 30% CTR just like before. But if we scroll over, you can see that Google has only registered 3 conversions as opposed to the 6. So it's registered half the number of conversions. And I can tell you, looking at the back-end data, that the 6 from HighRoast is the accurate number. And that's why this is so important, because we might look at the Google Ads data and come to the wrong conclusion, think this isn't profitable, turn stuff off when we shouldn't, but we can verify it with the HighRoast data and make much better, more informed decisions and end up with better overall ad results because of it. So if you want to improve the performance of your Google Ad campaigns and be able to see exactly where your leads and sales are coming from, go ahead and sign up to HighRoast. There is a link in the video description. Number 14 is to use an ad schedule. Now, some businesses are happy for their Google Ads to run all day, every day, particularly those with larger budgets because they just want to get as many customers as possible. Also, for some smaller budget businesses, let's say you're an e-commerce business, it might make sense for your ads to run 24/7 because Google's going to be optimizing for purchases, and if someone's not likely to convert in the middle of the night, then you're less likely to be advertising to those people anyway. But there are other types of businesses, particularly a lot of lead-based businesses, a lot of service businesses, or even those that operate with a small budget for an e-com business, but just really want to make sure they get absolutely the most out of every single click and every single ad impression that they generate, where it might be really important to just advertise during certain times of the day. Think of a service-based business. Advertising only 9 to 5 if you're B2B probably makes a lot of sense. Even if you're B2C, you probably don't want to be advertising through the middle of the night, maybe not on weekends, depending on what it is that you advertise. So if you've not got much data within your Google Ad account, you can just sort of create one of these out of common sense and think, when are my prospects most active? When do I actually want to be advertising? If you do have data, you can actually use a time of day report to specifically see when do people convert less, when is there much less activity, and then create an ad schedule. Either way, here's how you create an ad schedule, right? So I'm back in the example ad account, and then underneath audiences, keywords, and content, we can click on here and click add schedule, and then we can go ahead and click edit ad schedule. We need to select a campaign, so we could select this campaign, for example, and then we have a number of options. So we can go with Monday to Fridays, like I said, just advertise on weekends, be more specific and select certain days of the week. I'm going to go with Monday to Fridays here. And then we enter in our times, right? So for a lot of B2B businesses looking to generate leads, I think a 9 to 5 makes a lot of sense. That's when your prospects are going to be looking for you, when they're going to be most active. And that's also when you're going to be able to say, pick up the phone or get in touch with them really quickly. And we know speed to contacting a lead matters when it comes to conversion rates. So we can add in a schedule like that, which now applies to that campaign. But you could add in other schedules. It's going to vary massively depending on your business. Some businesses just want to advertise on the weekends and not during the week. Others 24/7, but that's how you go ahead and add in an ad schedule. And particularly as a small budget advertiser, you do not want to be burning 30%, 40% of your budget when people don't convert for your business specifically. So you can take advantage of a simple ad scheduling feature and make sure you get more out of your clicks and your impressions. Next, make sure you leverage remarketing early. So remarketing is simply putting ads in front of people that have already interacted with your business. Now, a lot of small budget advertisers, because they're not generating tons of clicks, they're not generating lots of engagement, think, well, is there any point in me remarketing because there's not that many people in the remarketing audience, so maybe I need to wait until I've got a much larger remarketing audience and then go with that. That's not what I would recommend. I'd recommend that you take advantage of these warm audiences that you've generated. Absolutely make sure that anything external that Google doesn't have visibility over, things like an email list, even if it's not very big, is uploaded to your ad account. That's going to provide Google with more data for better targeting, better optimization anyway, whether or not you're actually putting ads in front of those specific people. So definitely worth doing. But also, even if only a relatively small portion of your smaller budget is going towards putting ads in front of people that have already interacted with your business, that could still make a big difference to your return on ad spend. Because we talked about before, focusing really on the bottom of funnel. Well, if you combine that with not just the bottom of funnel, as in those are the people that are closest to purchasing or becoming a lead, but also they're the ones that are most interested in you because they've checked out your business specifically, That's where the best return on ad spend comes from. That's what's going to allow you to reinvest and scale, right? So you can remarket through search campaigns. You can layer in those audiences into your search campaigns. It's not as obvious as, say, remarketing through like the display network, where they're going to see banner ads all over the websites they visit and all that sort of stuff. But like I said, it doesn't take that much time and effort to set up. It's a skill you need to learn and a thing you need to set up as a Google advertiser. You're going to benefit from Google's optimization even if you don't remarket. So it just totally makes sense to get this done. Number 16, and this is an advanced tactic that can make a huge difference, is to use micro conversions intelligently. Okay, so a lot of Google advertisers, particularly those that operate with smaller budgets, run into the issue where they just aren't generating enough conversions for Google to be able to learn and optimize properly. If you're only generating a handful of purchases a week, it's just not much for Google to go on. It takes so long for the campaign to optimize, and it's really difficult for you to get to the stage where that campaign can then be profitable, which will then allow you to scale and get out of that situation. If you see that come up and you think that's an issue within your ad account, what you can do is you can train Google to optimize for micro conversions as opposed to full conversions. So instead of optimizing for, say, purchases or even leads, perhaps you could switch, and the conversion event to optimize for could be add to cart. You're typically going to generate a lot more add to carts than you are purchases. Or you could go with other options, things like 50% scroll depth on the landing page or the product page. That is possible to set up. I'll have more content about how to do those sorts of things specifically soon, because I know that's something I need to cover. I don't want to get into technicalities of this video. It's already going to be long enough as is. But that is something you can do. You could also do it based on time on site. So someone counts as a conversion if they've spent a certain amount of time on site or scrolled a certain amount on the product page, or a combination of the two. And this is much better than what a lot of Google advertisers do, where they go, I'm not generating enough purchase, I'm not generating enough leads for Google to optimize, therefore I'll just optimize for clicks. Someone who has scrolled 50% of the landing page is more valuable than someone who has just clicked. So better that Google optimizes for them. They are more likely to convert. Same with someone who has added to cart, obviously. Same with someone who spent a certain amount of time on site. They spent 30 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever you decide it to be on site. And that can be a way to not just go with a click optimization, which has all sorts of issues we've already described, but if you're not in that situation where you can do the ideal scenario and optimize fully for what you want, which is purchases or return on ad spend or even leads, then this could be a good halfway house. So a bit more an advanced technique to be able to go ahead and set up these different conversion events. Not that difficult to do. You'll be able to find support documentation. Like I said, I'll have content coming out about this shortly, because I think it'll be really useful, particularly for small budget advertisers. But it can really help train Google to go after the people that are more valuable to your business, which will help improve your campaigns, get better returns, allow you to scale and do the things you want to do. 17, do everything you can to improve ad relevance. So the cheapest clicks on Google are the ones that Google wants to show. I'll explain what I mean. So Google has this thing called a relevance score. And what the relevance score is designed to do is it's designed to encourage advertisers to create ads and offer landing page experiences that their users like and enjoy. Because imagine a scenario where someone's searching for things on Google and the ads are popping up are just not relevant to what they're searching, or they click through and the landing page is nonsense full of spam, and like they just leave, right? Well, that is not good for Google, because that is going to train users to not click on ads, right? It's not something that Google wants. So they incentivize advertisers who are providing what their users want with a higher relevance score. And a higher relevance score equates to a lower cost per click. Now, this is really important if you're operating with a smaller budget and you need to generate as many clicks, as much data as possible for Google to optimize. So there are a few recommendations of how you can improve your ad relevance, right? So use your keywords in your headlines. Pretty easy way to do it. If you're using AO Max, that's likely to be done for you automatically, but you want to check and make sure. Clear, benefit-driven copy. Don't try and be clever. Don't try and inject too much personality. There's places for that within marketing, absolutely. But within your initial search campaign, it's sort of high risk, high reward, not something I'd recommend you do. We need to get this first campaign or these first campaigns nicely profitable so you can scale. That's the goal at the moment. So clear, benefit-driven copy, don't be clever, don't try and make things any more difficult than they need to be. And then make sure you add in all the ad extensions, the ad assets, site links, callouts, structured snippets, promotions, anything that applies to your business, location. You want to take up as much space on the page as possible, whether on desktop or on mobile. That's more likely to get the click, increases your click-through rate, and that's what increases your relevance score. Relevance score is mostly a combination of click-through rate. So did users go, oh, that's interesting, I'll click on that. And then also how long people spend on your landing page. Because if they bounce back off, that's not great, is it? That's not a good user experience. If people stick around, then they do better, right? So make sure you've got all those ad assets. In fact, I'll jump into the example ad account, just show you quickly what it is that I'm talking about. So we're in the new campaign creation window, and beneath where you've put in your the assets like headlines and descriptions about your ad, you've got all this stuff down here, right? So you've got site links, add links to your ads to take people to a specific page on the website. You can add in a whole bunch. Call outs, give more people information. You can see more asset types, 0 of 7. There are tons. Promotions, prices, calls, structured snippets, lead forms, apps, etc. Not all of these are going to apply to all businesses, but most often do apply. Sometimes you might decide you don't want to put your price in. Sometimes you do. You might want to dissuade people that aren't right, or we talked about tactics for that earlier on in the video. But things like call outs, structured snippets, site links, that's basically going to apply to everyone. Get those in there. There's no downside in doing so other than a little bit of time, but you want your budget to go as fast as possible, so get it done. Number 18 is to mine competitor insights the smart way. And here's what I mean by that. Your competitors are likely making mistakes, and those mistakes are your shortcuts, they're your opportunities. So if you've run Google Ad campaigns before and you have data, then you can go into your auction insights report and you can see which other businesses are also running ads alongside yours, which are your direct competitors on Google. Then you can go to the Google Ads Transparency Center and check out those ads. By the way, if you don't have that data, you can also do this because you probably already have a sense of who your competitors are. So you can just go ahead and jump to the Google Ads Transparency Center, which is here. Now, this is a tool where you can take a look at the ads that any Google advertiser is running. Google created this for privacy reasons, very similar to Meta Ads Library, for example, but it's also great for us to be able to do competitor research. So if I just enter in a massive company in here, right, like Apple, just so we can see how this works, you can see in the UK, Apple are running 200-ish ads. They've got ads. What they've got ads for here? AirPods, Apple Music, like just all the stuff you'd expect, right? So then you can go through and you can take a look at your ads. And there's a few things you're looking for here. You're looking for things they've done really well that you maybe didn't think of. You're thinking, great, let's go ahead and implement that in our stuff, whether it's certain angles or certain things they really emphasize. You can click through and take a look at landing pages, really useful stuff. You can also, and this is kind of the main reason behind this point, try and find things that they're not doing, mistakes that they're making like we talked about. So maybe they have gaps in their messaging. Most advertisers do. The things that they're not saying or emphasizing that you think are actually really important to your customers. So it could be things like they're not emphasizing urgency in their ad copy, in their messaging. They're not emphasizing localness. That can be a really big competitive advantage for local businesses, just making it really clear that you are local and you are the logical local option. A good way for smaller businesses to compete against larger businesses that operate more broadly from a geographical area standpoint, because people prefer to work with people that are local to them, businesses that are local to them. Or affordability. Perhaps yours is more affordable to your competitors, or that's a really big selling point of your option, so you can really look to hammer that home and you can put that into your messaging in your ads. It can also affect your landing pages as you expand to other campaign types later on. It can be in your ad creative, like your imagery and your videos and things like that. So this isn't always possible to find gems doing this, going through this process, but often it is. Definitely worth doing. You might find some stuff that really helps you stand out and you see your click-through rate and your conversion rates go through the roof as a result. Number 19 is to use one-click credibility. So when you're operating with a small budget, you don't have the budget to create lots of different touch points with your prospects. That's part of the reason why I've talked about focusing on search and going after the bottom of funnel. Now that means we need to try and establish credibility and create trust at a glance as opposed to doing it over time. That's definitely something you will want to do later on, but that's once you're able to expand your budget and expand to other campaign types. So we need it to happen instantly, which means we need to include trust anchors in ad copy and in landing pages, right? So a good example would be something like this. Let's jump over to our example Google Ad account within our campaign creation window, and you could add in a subscription, or even you could even add this as a headline, given it's 27 characters actually, trusted by 1,200 businesses. Over 500 plus 5-star reviews, as an example. Maybe it could be an accreditation, fully certified with some sort of acronym to do with your industry, right? In some businesses, that's really, really important. If it's a marketing agency, like worked with Apple on their new campaign, like credibility indicators. And actually, because this is small enough to fit in a headline, we could go up here and like add this in as a headline trusted by 1,200 plus businesses. And then we could choose to pin it like we talked about previously to make sure that it is visible if we feel it's that important to our business, to the impression that we want to give. This may well be the only time we put an ad in front of this person, particularly if they're right at the bottom of funnel. So we need to convince them that we are a credible, good option to work with. and this is a good way to do so. My next point is very strategic and also very important. It's something that I'm constantly saying to Google advertisers, beginners, intermediate, advanced, when I'm speaking to them as part of my mentorship program, when I'm speaking to them directly. And that's to think in terms of CAC payback as opposed to just your cost per conversion, CAC being cost to acquire a customer. So how long does it take for you to recoup the money you have invested to acquire a customer in the first place and optimize around that as opposed to just a cost per conversion number? Because that factors in how much those customers are worth to you, which is really important. Like $50 cost per lead might be really expensive to some businesses, but it's not. It's actually really cheap if each lead is worth $500 to your business, right? Based on your conversion rates and how much money you make. So a lot of small advertisers look at a campaign, they look at results and think, that's too expensive, I'm paying way too much in cost per conversion, couldn't possibly run that. And you run through the numbers and you're like, if you're able to hit this conversion rate and these customers are worth this to you, this is like an 8x return on ad spend. And they're like, oh, well, that sounds pretty good. It's like, yeah, if you have an ad platform where you can invest $1 and get 8 out, that seems pretty good to me. But they're just seeing like the initial cost per lead or sometimes even cost per purchase. There's more likely to be with a cost per lead setup with this issue specifically as the problem. It's also why you want to invest a lot of time and effort into increasing your customer lifetime value. How can you get them to buy again? How can you get people on subscription and recurring models? How can you get them to refer you to friends, family members, and things like that so that you get more out of what you spend? Is because if you can make more money from each customer, you can afford to pay more to acquire that customer. That's going to make your campaigns more profitable, and that's what's going to help you scale and get out of operating with a small budget, because things do get easier when you spend a bit more. You are able to optimize campaigns better. You have more budget with which to test. You have more budget to hire influencers to produce ad creative for you that's going to work really well as part of display, performance max, demand gen campaigns. So thinking about it in terms of CAC and that CAC payback period, like how quickly do we get that back? Do we get it back on the initial transaction? Do we get it back after someone's bought 1.4 times on average? That's how the pros think. And actually, one of the big misconceptions I think amongst beginner Google advertisers is that the best Google advertisers pay less in terms of cost per conversion than the beginner Google advertisers. Now, of course, sometimes that's true, particularly if beginners haven't, say, been through content like mine and they don't really understand the platform. But often, pros are operating at such a large scale and they're advertising for the top of funnel as well as the middle of funnel as well as the bottom funnel. So their cost per conversion is not as low as you would expect, but they're so good with their marketing, sales funnel, and customer retention processes at making much more money from each customer that they can afford to pay more to acquire customers and do so at massive scale. Because once you reach massive scale, your cost to acquire a customer is going to go up. Like I said, you're also advertising at the top of funnel and a few other reasons as well. So yeah, that's kind of a big misconception in the space of like the best advertisers don't always fight for the lowest cost per conversion. They win in other ways that gives them competitive advantage and allows them to be more profitable over time. And number 21. Spend at least as much time improving your landing page as you do working on your Google ad campaigns themselves. Now, throughout this video, I've mentioned various things and talked about use this type of messaging, this type of language, make sure it follows through onto the landing page. That's really important. But I wanted landing pages and putting time and effort into improving them and some specific recommendations to have its own specific point because it is so important. I don't want to understate that. If your landing page doesn't convert, nothing else matters. Doesn't matter how cheap your clicks are from Google, how well targeted they are, how much intent they've got, that's going to let the site down. And particularly with a small budget, it doesn't cost you any extra to have a landing page that converts at twice the rate. You've already paid for that traffic from Google. If you can convert at twice the rate, you get twice as many conversions without having to pay a penny more. It's such an important component of making your small budget go far, getting the most out of it, which will make you as profitable as possible, which will allow you to reinvest, okay? So I've got some specific recommendations for how to improve your landing page and things you might want to do or adjust if you don't meet this criteria, right? So firstly, keep one clear call to action. You don't want a confusing landing page where people can come through to click on this and click on that. We've all had that experience, right? Where you go through to a website and you're like, I just wanted a pair of shoes. Like, what's going on here? There's this and that, and I could have these ones. Keep it really simple. Make sure your landing page follows on from the promise of the ad. There has to be congruity there. The best results when it comes to conversion rates from landing pages typically comes from specific landing pages that match the messaging in the ad, that match the offer, that match the searcher's intent. Like they all follow through. Sometimes you'll have a landing page that tries to do that job for multiple different offers or multiple different customer avatars, they typically don't convert as well, right? So the more specific you can be, the better. Then also focus on speed. So page load speed is really important. Slow loading pages can kill performance. Again, we want every click to go as far as it possibly can to get the most out of our small budget. A simple way to do that is with some speed tests. There are things you can do to improve page loading speed. And then also split test different designs. This is something that takes quite a lot of time and effort, to be honest, although easier with AI tools helping this out, as well as obviously with Google Ad campaign creation. But a lot of people will create a landing page and be like, that's the design, that's what I always run with. And they'll constantly be tweaking and playing around with their Google Ad campaigns and not thinking, well, actually, what if we did change up the color scheme on this page? Or what if we did move these elements around or include a little bit more, include a little bit less? There are tools you can use to split test different landing page variations and find which works best. The businesses that convert the best post-click from Google Ads or any digital marketing platform, to be honest, they spend a lot of time and effort split testing and designing their landing page. The classic example being Amazon. They famously run an enormous amount of split tests on their product pages, landing pages to see what improves conversion rates and all that sort of thing. Like, it's well documented within the space that they do that to an enormous degree. And who has a better conversion rate, a better checkout rate than Amazon? No one, right? So really something to think about, really something to put your time and effort into. Don't just get sucked into the Google Ads side of things, because testing and tinkering with the landing page is often harder and more effort. It's just as important. So put some time and focus there, and that will allow you to get your budget to go further. It doesn't cost any extra to have a better converting landing page. Now, if you're operating with a small Google Ads budget, then there's a good chance you're relatively new to Google Ads. In that case, I'd strongly recommend you check out this video, because that video is a full beginner's guide, a tutorial to Google Ads. I walk you through the entire Google Ad campaign creation process from scratch. You can interweave a lot of the stuff we've talked about from this video and apply that in that campaign. And if you want to go from relative beginner to someone who can have a Google Ad campaign that can consistently generate lead sales, whatever it is that you're looking for from Google Ads, that is the best video to watch out of all the ones that I've created on my channel. Go ahead, check it out.